What's up, degenerates? This is Locked In. I'm your host, Mason Cameron at PFF_Mace on the Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta at Vishaal_Gupta95 on Twitter. We have a jam-packed week. It seems like they saved all the marquee matchups for just this month. The last month has been absolutely insane. Some must-watch games on the slate the last few weeks, and there's another few this week, and we're definitely going to break into it here, and I'm excited about it, as you can tell. How are you doing, V? How are you living? Are you ready to break down the week with us?
Absolutely. It was a great holiday weekend last week, and now we're going to get right back into, the grip of things here. It should be a great week. Was it 13 already? Crazy. Things are flying by, but excited to get into it.
It is, and I feel like I have to ask you every week because it's just become a fever dream of I don't even remember what week we're on. I just continue to chug along until somebody tells me to stop. So that's where we're at now. But V, to start our breakdown, we had an incredible game on the Thursday night slate, which, to be honest, I didn't think was going to end up as good as it was. It was phenomenal. Not usual for Thursday night games, but wow, it was fantastic. So that's the first game we're breaking into tonight, and it was the Seattle Seahawks heading into Dallas. And man, they almost took it from Dallas. It came down to the wire. Seattle 35, Dallas 41. Seattle did manage to cover the 8.5-point spread, which was impressive given how good Dallas has been against the spread in these games by more than a touchdown. When they're favored by more than a touchdown, this is something we've talked about previously. They have been fantastic. I want to say they were like 9-1 as a touchdown plus favorite, and they just didn't come out with this one. Seattle, they cooked it up. They played really well. The total on this one, 47.5 points. They went well over that. This was done in like 3 quarters, like 2.5 quarters. And it was just an impressive outing from everybody. Dak is icy. Dak is an icy quarterback in his veins. I think that like his performance over the last month should absolutely catapult him near the top of this MVP discussion. He's been fantastic. One of the top passing grades in the league over the last month. Most big time throws, fewest turnover worthy plays. This guy is absolutely cooking, and Dallas is looking good. But we have to also talk about prime time Geno, baby. Prime time Geno played so well last night. He didn't end up getting it done, and honestly kind of fell back into his kind of head scratching ways on that last drive. But by and large, he looked decently well. What did you make of this matchup, V? How did you take away from this one?
Yeah, definitely a very entertaining game. Was not expecting it to be quite as close as it was, or for your Seattle to have a lead as late in the game as they did. So good job for them. Unfortunately, they don't come up with a win, and they're really kind of back up against it right now because they're sitting at 6-6. I think they're still the 6th seed right now in the NFC, but they're only half a game up on teams like the Packers and the Saints, who have significantly easier schedules down the road than Seattle does, who still has to go to San Fran and play Philly in the next couple of weeks. So you're staring right down the barrel at 6-8 over the next couple of weeks, and essentially you're going to have to win out your final 3 games there to make the playoffs. So that's what it seems like it's going to be. So tough situation despite the great game from them last night. We'll see what they do. On the Dallas side, you have to continue to be very impressed with their offense, just putting up crazy numbers. I think they put up 40 plus in however many straight games over the last few weeks. It's pretty incredible. But defense, they made a couple plays, in the second half of that game, but overall, I think there might be a little bit of concern there on that defense. They've played 3 games this year where their opponent was above 500 at the point in the season when that game took place. In each of those games, they've given up 28 plus points. That includes games against San Francisco, Philly, and Seattle last night, who were 6-5 heading into that game. So anytime they're playing in an above average offense, they're kind of getting torched right now. So it's a little bit of a concern heading into the playoffs. Again, it's not necessarily their fault because they're just playing the teams on their schedule, but their next few weeks are going to be massive for determining how good they really are. They get to play Philly, they get to play Buffalo, they get to play Miami. That is their key stretch to really tell us, is this team for real, or is it really just been a product of their schedule? So very interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. I'm not going to make any sort of determinations on them right now. And my feeling is that it's a little bit overblown, the hype they're getting right now, just given who they're playing, but we'll find out.
Yeah, and and they also sneak in the Lions there after that
Right. Yeah.
insane stretch too. And as much as the Lions have kind of uh struggled as of recently, that's still an insanely good offense when everything
Yep.
is clicking. So that's going to be another uphill battle for them. Two of those games also on the road, at Buffalo and at Miami. So definitely a tough draw for them to close out the season. And you hit the nail on the head. That defense, as much as we've talked about how good the defense is and how opportunistic they've been with turnovers and whatnot, they don't look terribly good against offenses that know what they're doing. So that's going to be a thing that we're going to watch moving forward, and definitely a potential for more shootouts. 76 total points in this game definitely came as a shock to me. But to be frank, 47 was never the right total for this game. They were always going to go over this total right from the jump. And now we get more solidified evidence that we can target some of their overs as we move forward. You said it best. They have not scored under 21 points since week 6.
That's pretty good.
They have since week 10, they have 49, 33, 45, and 41. So they are absolutely clicking offensively. And I think at this point, they kind of don't really care that their defense is kind of struggling because they're still winning games and they're still
Right.
putting up big points. But it will definitely come back to them once these more efficient offenses kind of show up. So that was
Yep.
an awesome game. I can't wait to break down this week, though. We have an incredible slate of games. The first game we're heading into for the week is going to be the Arizona Cardinals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Arizona here, shockingly, 5.5-point underdogs on the road against Pittsburgh. I'm not going to lie, V. This one confused me slightly. I understand that the Cardinals did not play their best game last week against LA. They came out flat. We took a beating on that one. Of course, I did specifically. And now we're looking at a very similar line against Pittsburgh. While Pittsburgh hasn't been that good, I'm not sure Pittsburgh should be 5.5-point favorites against anybody right now. But there's a lot that we need to talk about for this game. I know you have a couple of picks on this one. So which way are you flowing with this matchup?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards Arizona plus 5.5 and on the under in this game at 41. I understand, this line on paper, given how Arizona has looked the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, they scored 16 points at Houston. And then last week, they got destroyed at home against the Rams, only putting up 14 points and allowing over 30 points, almost 40 points to the Rams last week. So it makes sense on paper, but Pittsburgh does not score points. They have scored 20 or fewer points in 4 of their last 5 games. They have not scored more than 2 touchdowns in a game since week 7 at the Rams. It is very difficult to cover a 5.5-point spread when you cannot reach 20 points at a consistent basis. So that is kind of why it's very difficult to take Pittsburgh in this game because you would have to think that Arizona can get to 14 points in this game, which means Pittsburgh would have to score at least 20 to cover this game, which again is just not something they're doing at any sort of consistent rate. Now the thing is, this looks like a great matchup for Pittsburgh because the one thing Pittsburgh does well, they have been running the ball very successfully over the last few weeks with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. And now they're going up against an Arizona team that has struggled mightily. They got destroyed against the run last week for over 228 rushing yards to Connor Williams and Royce Freeman. So this seems like it could be a very, very big day for Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. Look out for some prop picks in our Discord. I'm sure we're going to have a couple of those in there. But even if they put a massive rushing yards, if they can't get the ball into the end zone, which this Pittsburgh offense has not been able to do, you're just not going to be able to cover this 5.5 point spread. Even if I have a feeling this is going to be a game where Pittsburgh looks like the dominant team all throughout the game. They're moving the ball up and down the field. They're padding their stats, but it's going to be once again a situation where if they're not going to get the ball into the end zone, you can't take them to cover this big of a point spread. So I think you just kind of have to hold your nose and take Arizona plus 5.5 and the under. It's not going to feel great because they're going to feel like they're clearly the worst team between the two. But I do have a feeling they're going to find a way to cover the spread at the end.
Yeah, and the big one definitely has to be because of Kyler Murray for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What he can do with the ball in his hands is he is a big play waiting to happen. As much as he might not be this absolute knockout first overall pick at quarterback like many built him as when he was coming out, and as many built him up as early on in his career. He's had some struggles over the last couple of seasons, but so far since returning, 4 big time throws, only 2 turnover worthy plays. Granted, it was 1-1 in each of the last 2, so he has struggled a little bit, but we've seen it. He's been able to drop a couple of dimes, some vintage Kyler plays that you're like, wow, that's what we were waiting for. That's what we want to look at. And those are the type of plays that really hurt a team like Pittsburgh, where scoring is very methodical, where they have to really design up a lot of looks and a lot of things have to go right for them to put points on the board. They are essentially the opposite of being able to score at will, like we like to coin for a lot of these other high powered offenses. So when things like that happen, I think it lends itself to exactly what you said, where Pittsburgh going to look like the better team this entire game. They're just not 5.5 points better. And that 1 or 2 big plays that Kyler Murray is able to pull out of the bag are probably going to make the difference. And that will be where we go from there, especially when you talk about what their defense does well in rushing the passer. Kyler, with his ability to move and his ability as a rusher, has been fantastic since returning. Granted, I kind of took an L last week on his rushing total, but
You did get
that's
in the end
neither.
zone, which you had, so that was a good
He
hit.
did get in the end zone, but we digress. So
Yes.
anyway, but yes, so I'm right there with you. And another big tidbit for this game right now, which I'm not really sure if it lends itself more to Pittsburgh or less to Pittsburgh, but it definitely lends itself to the under in general here at 41. It's that there's a 74% chance of rain in the forecast in Pittsburgh. It says it's not supposed to be terribly cold, but we are heading into December. Forecasts change quickly. It gets cold very quickly, and Pittsburgh is not traditionally a warm place in December. So, with that being said, this could be a pretty ugly matchup the entire time, and I can't wait to see it personally. So,
Yeah,
this
should
is
be
going
fun.
to be a good little matchup and a great money making opportunity for us for sure. The next game we have on the list, on the surface, it could have been a really, really good matchup.
Yeah.
It really could have. A shootout even, which is, I think, what Oddsmakers still kind of project it to be, but we'll get into that here in a second. The next game on the slate, we have the Miami Dolphins heading into Washington to take on the Commanders. Miami, 9.5-point road favorites again. They have been massive favorites everywhere they've been, and it hasn't exactly equated to the best against the spread record. They've been good, they've been decent, but they have struggled with some of these larger spreads. They are 7-4 against the spread, but that's neither here nor there because we are targeting the total in this game at about 49.5 or 50 points. It looks like it is starting to creep down to even 49 points. And it's obviously because odds makers kind of whiffed on this one a little bit, I think. We'll get some tidbits out of the way. 53% chance of rain in the forecast. So, it might get a little messy. It might not, but it definitely doesn't lend itself to an over at 50 points, frankly. And I know that we are both leaning on the under here, V. And for me, the biggest thing is we know the Dolphins are a good offense when everything is clicking. They just don't always seem to blow every team out of the water. They've been, decently good in recent weeks where, they absolutely slaughtered the Jets. But frankly, who isn't slaughtering the Jets right now? And sorry, Aaron, I know you're watching the show because you're a friend of the show. Aaron, what are you talking about? The Jets' playoffs chances are what hinges on your return, brother. Just take the rest of the season. They are
Dude is
four.
living in a fantasy land. We've
You are
known
not
that
coming back.
the last couple
Yeah,
years.
you are not coming back this week. You're not coming back this year, Aaron. Just take a break, hit Mexico. They'll be fine next year. But I digress. So we are leaning on the under here. The big thing for me, though, is obviously I can't trust Washington to frankly do much right now. They have been atrocious. The last game, 45-10 against Dallas, 31-19 against the Giants. We have absolutely skewered the Giants all season, and then they came out and whooped the Commanders. And I'm pretty sure we were on the Commanders' side on that one and took a beating for that. So it's just been embarrassing what they've been doing off. I shouldn't say embarrassing because that's a little rough. They have just been fairly inept offensively over the last few weeks. And I'm not sure that a 50-point game total lends itself to whatever this team is doing right now. So what do you make of this matchup, B? I'm sure that you have a lot of the same sentiment, but you're probably going to wax much more poetically than I have here.
Yeah, this just feels like way too many points to me. I think this is a situation where Miami would have to score like at least 35 points in this one for this game to go over because Washington is just not doing much of anything on offense recently. They have scored 20 or fewer points in 3 of their last 4 games. That's talking about Washington. And now they're going up against a Miami defense that has really turned the corner since Jalen Ramsey's return. In the 4 games since he's been back, they have allowed 17 or fewer points to opposing offenses in those 4 games. They gave up 21 to Kansas City, but 7 of those came on a defensive score for Kansas City. So they have allowed 17 or fewer offensive points in 4 straight games since Jalen Ramsey's return. Miami's offense is also slowed down just a touch over their last 3 games. They've scored 27 or fewer points in their last 3. The main thing is that they have turned the ball over 7 times in that span. Tua has kind of, gotten a little loose with the football recently, a lot of interceptions and a couple fumbles to go along with it. So if you don't have Miami being able to do the brunt of the work, which in this case I definitely think they would have to score in the mid to high 30s, then you just can't take the over in this game because you can't trust Washington to do their part right now. Again, this is just a team that is continuously just going, 40, 50 straight dropbacks per game with Sam Howell, and that's just not going to get it done because the offensive line isn't there. Sam Howell's talent isn't there. They need to find something more creative to do on offense, and until they do that, you can't really trust this offense. So have to take the under in this one.
And, something is to be said about Miami losing Jalen Phillips over the
Yep.
week. That's a tough loss for them for sure. He's been a highly productive pass rusher for them and a big reason why this defense has been so good. But I think you hit the nail on the head. They are now one of the elite secondaries in the league right now with the
Yep.
way that they have been playing, the talent they have back there. A lot of ball hawks, a lot of guys taking the ball
We
away.
still have Xavier Howard. We haven't said his name at all this year, but he's still there. He's still a good player.
And he had an interception last week, and that was one that we were talking about with, or who else had that? Somebody else had
Javon
another.
Holland had one, and then
Javon Holland
somebody
had
else.
one. Yeah, so they've just been fantastic, and we talked about Jalen Ramsey's ability to take the ball away, 3 interceptions since his return. They've been fantastic in the secondary. That it's not really a huge hit to not have 2 elite pass rushers. They still do have Bradley Chubb, who is playing very well in terms of being a productive pass rusher. So when we look at that, I don't see that as the huge hit that I think odds makers might be attributing it to. And frankly, this has been a consistent trend that we've seen with Washington totals over the last handful of weeks, especially since they got rid of their dynamic pass rushers, which I mean, we can talk until we're blue in the face on if those were good deals for them or not. That all still remains to be seen. But right now, what we know is that their totals are trending higher, but their offense is not pushing out the ball the way that it needs to hit some of these higher totals. So that's going to be something that we ID and shop very early on in the week, trying to get these very juiced totals, get under them, and then watch them crash as the week goes. Just how this one has, where this game started at 50.5 points early on in the week. It has now, it's still going. It's still moving down since we've picked these picks just in the last couple of days, just in the last day or two, 24 hours. It has moved down to 49 in some spots. So it'll be something that's worth watching. And I would anticipate to move even further down as we get closer to kickoff.
Yep, for sure.
And the next game, it's going to be a good one. I'm excited for it. The next game on our slate, the Denver Broncos heading into Houston to take on the Texans. I'm so torn with this game right now because obviously Denver native, the Broncos hold a place in my heart, and they've been playing fantastically well over the last few weeks. It's beautiful. Houston, though, have been my adopted team this year. I love what Houston's doing, and I just make jokes because I don't have actually, frankly, any team. But Houston, so much fun to watch. They've been fantastic. CJ Stroud, he's playing well. You know, it's a tough matchup right here. And frankly, a few weeks ago, I didn't think Denver at Houston would be a good matchup, but it's one of the better matchups of the week. Houston at home -3. Game total for this one, 47.5 points. I know that we are both liking Denver V at +3 in the hook. It's oh so beautiful to get that hook there for us. And I'm actually leaning on the under in this one also. 47.5, just too high for me. It's something we've talked about a lot. The Broncos, they've picked it up defensively. They become one of the better defenses in the league over the last month. 18 points per game over their last 3. That's top 10 in the NFL over that span. They hit 37 last week in Denver. They hit over the 37 last week. But that's the first over they've hit since week 5. And frankly, 37 was a low number for that game in general. I know that we weren't afraid of it, and I wasn't afraid of it, but I also didn't expect the Browns defense to be as porous as they've kind of been as of recently. And that's something we'll get into a little bit later when we talk about the Cleveland matchup. But Houston also under in their last 2. And it's around the same total that this one is going to be at. They were at 48. And those games came against worse defenses, and they still managed to go over or under, excuse me. So right here with how well Denver's played, I'm leaning on the under. This game just screams a battle of back and forth plays. I don't really see a ton of points going here, but I want to get your input on this game since we are both liking Denver also at +3.5. What are you seeing with this matchup, 2V? Anything that I'm missing here?
Well, what a fantastic matchup we have going into this weekend. I mean, this is the game of the early slate. Who would have thought we would have been saying that a few weeks ago? Huge playoff implications for both teams as they're both sitting at 6-5 right now. So a huge game for both of them if they want to make the playoffs. But yeah, we have to start off with what Denver has done recently. They have won 5 in a row, and that is because they are playing incredible complementary football right now. Starting with the defense, they have allowed an average of 16 points in those 5 games. And in those 5 games, they have an incredible 16 takeaways. They are averaging more than 3 takeaways per game over the last 5. That's just crazy. That never happens. You don't see that. So great job by that defense. Their offense has also been very efficient during that stretch. They have turned the ball over just 3 times in those 5 games. Russell Wilson has 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in that span. They're going up against a Houston defense that just got torched by Trevor Lawrence last week for and 64 passing yards. They could not slow him down whatsoever. Their secondary got burned so bad that they had to make a couple moves this weekend. They released Shaq Griffin and then signed Desmond King to hopefully bolster that secondary. Houston also has another injury on their offensive line with Titus Howard going out. He's going to miss some time. So now you have to take that into consideration going up against this young Denver pass rush that has really improved over the last few weeks with guys like Jake Browning just kind of blowing up opposing offensive lines. This game really feels like it's going to be a coin flip. So when you're getting 3 points, and in a lot of places you can find the hook as well to get it at 3.5, you really just can't pass that up. There's just way too much value in this game. This game is going to come right down to it. It can really go either way. 3 points is kind of right in that zone. So you can get 3 and the hook. Absolutely cannot pass that up. So that's where the play is for me this week.
Absolutely. It's a huge value, especially given what you just said. Winner of their last 5, they are 4-1 against the spread as well. That is Denver, 4-1 against the spread. And they've been playing, like you said, fantastic complementary football. The defense is clicking, tons of turnovers. Baron Browning coming into his own. That was a shocker, as a number of, or at the start of this season, even the start of last season, injuries had been an issue for him. People were wondering if he makes it out of camp. And now all of a sudden he is one of the hearts of this defense right now, absolutely getting after the pass rusher. It's incredible to watch this turnaround, which I think is a shock to literally everybody in the football landscape. Every single person that's ever watched football remembers the 70-20 Dolphins game, and they always will. It'll live in my mind forever. And if you were to tell me that this was going to be the team that you would get after that game, I would have called you a liar. But now here we are sitting with it. In the Texans, unfortunately, also haven't covered their last 2, being favorites against the Cardinals and 1-point dogs against the Jags. As you said, the Jags kind of got anything they wanted with them. A bit of a surprise to us, as we were also on Houston thinking they were going to be able to keep this game tight, and it just did not.
Which is away from going to overtime in that game, so I don't feel too bad. It was
It's not right. It wasn't too bad, but it was a tough look for them to come out behind at the end. So
sure.
We love to see it, though. It's going to be a good game. This is going to be a fantastic game. Tons of playoff implications. And like you said, the matchup to watch in the early window. I can't wait to see it go down for sure. All right. Into the afternoon slate, the late slate. We have the first game on the list is a pick of my own here. And we talked about it a little bit before in regards to what the Rams have been able to do and the Browns have in recent weeks. And for me, it's a combination of both. A lot of the times we can bet against these teams that we're fading, and sometimes the team you're betting on isn't necessarily your favorite pick for that, but it ends up working out anyway. This one, I'm just very confused where this game only sits at 3-ish points. I understand that we're getting minus a hook here with minus 3.5 for the Rams as they host the Browns. But my question being, why is this game not closer to 6 or 7, given how these teams have played? The return of Kyren Williams has meant the world to this Rams offense. We talked about it a little bit before. Fantastic matchup last week against the Cardinals. He is a huge reason why they absolutely slaughtered the Cardinals. Over 200 all-purpose yards for Kyren, 2 touchdowns. And if we're talking about it, the Cleveland defense has struggled stopping the run in recent weeks. They are the 6th worst EPA per play over the last 3 on the defensive side of the ball per rush. That is an incredible turnaround from one of the best and most stingy defenses in the league over the first 2 months of the season. They have struggled with backs recently. That is another reason why I really like some Kyren Williams props in here as well, which shameless plug. You're going to be able to get in our Discord this week. Go to importantnonsense.com, become a member, and that's how you get access to our Discord. Ask us any of your betting questions. If we don't break it down a game that you're interested in, ask us in there. You can also get all of your fantasy questions answered for the playoff push you're heading into right now from all the fantasy guys. So you definitely want to get in there. And if we're just going to touch on what Cleveland's doing right now, they promoted Joe Flacco from the practice squad. He will start this week for an injured DTR. I'm not even sure if that's an upgrade or not, frankly. It's really maybe a wash. Over the last 3 years, Joe Flacco has played in 12 games. He has 16 turnover-worthy plays. That's not a good look for a team right now that is struggling mightily offensively. They have just 2 touchdowns in their last 2 games. Defense not near as solid as they've been, and it's due in part to some of the injuries that they've had. Denzel Ward is again slated to miss this one as of right now. He has been a no-show in practice, or I shouldn't say a no-show, a non-participant in practice the last couple of days to start the week. So that's going to be something that we have to monitor moving forward, their health in the secondary, because that could really set this one back as the Rams are obviously coming back off of one of their best performances. They're getting healthy in spots. We highlighted it last week when we targeted the Cardinals against the Rams. It was always going to be a question of how healthy Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are. Now, at points, sometimes they look hobbled, and then they'll turn around and make an incredible play and take a big hit, and you're like, okay, never mind, he's fine.
Yeah.
So that's just how it's been going for them. And when they have all of these playmakers going and this run game functions the way that it is, we figured out this Rams offense. We figured it out months ago. So did the whole NFL. If you can stop this run game, the Rams offense is absolutely inept. They cannot figure out anything. If they get the run game going, it's a wrap. You have no shot to stop them. They will get what they want at will because they have the weapons to do it. And frankly, that's where this game sits for me. I think Cleveland is going to have an incredibly difficult time, given their recent trends, stopping the hot hand in Kyren Williams. He is going to have a nice day against this Cleveland Browns defense, which I'm sure shocks most people who don't look at recent trends for season-long trends and still think this Cleveland Browns defense is the best in the league, which as of right now, it is not. And that's where I'm leaning with this one. Rams -3.5. It only makes sense to me from there. I would take this game all the way up into maybe even the 5 and 6 range, frankly. I think that this is a full touchdown game, and this is not even going to be a close one that anybody has to sweat out. And you know what? Frankly, most aren't going to watch it. It's because the next game that is on the slate that we're going to talk about here in a second is going to have all eyes on it, baby. But before we jump into the game of the week, V, is there anything on this one that I missed in this that you're seeing that you maybe like, or any tidbits to add?
Well, yeah, this game opened at closer to, I think, 5.5 in the favor of the Rams. And I was actually, kind of interested in taking Cleveland at that point. That was early in the week when we weren't really sure what the injury status of some of these guys were going to be, including Myles Garrett and DTR. The line then quickly moved down to 3.5, and it kind of scared me away. I'd be very intrigued to see what odds makers think the value of Joe Flacco versus DTR is to the point spread. Is that the main reason this kind of moved down, or is it the combination of him and Myles Garrett? Because we had a lot of plays on this Cleveland Denver game last week, so I watched the game very closely. It was a slow start for DTR, but in that second and third quarter, he really played well. I was surprised to see him making some of the throws he was making. He was actually kind of scaring me into thinking Cleveland could not only cover but win that game outright. Then he takes a huge shot at the beginning of the third quarter and leaves with a concussion. PJ Walker comes in and is very inept for the rest of that game. But if DTR is able to clear that protocol and come and play this game, I think this is going to be very interesting, and this game might end up being a little bit closer than we would think. Flacco has not played NFL football since the start of last season when he was on with the Jets. So if odds makers are telling you that Flacco is more valuable to the point spread, that's an issue, and that's where you want to take the Rams, because I don't believe that is true given what DTR was able to do last week. He really impressed me. So definitely keep continuing to look at the injury report to see who is in and who is out in this game, especially at quarterback for Cleveland.
And I think that that's definitely how I read it, given the question also being with, Denzel Ward, Miles Garrett, what's their
Mhm.
health looking like? I think that that's probably more what's moving this line, which I think it's looking like the last I checked, I think it was looking like Garrett was trending towards playing.
Okay.
And Denzel Ward might not have been. I'll have to double check. That'll definitely be worth watching as we move into the
Yeah.
weekend for sure. But you're absolutely right. The question being, what are odds makers attributing as the spread differential for a DTR versus a Joe Flacco? Because frankly, I don't know that it's a whole lot different. I mean, the big thing being that Joe Flacco has zero ability to improvise, and that's frankly been the entire Browns offense over the last 2 months is improvisation by young, inexperienced passers. Now, maybe that's not exactly what they game plan every week, but that tends to be how it turns when the bullets start flying and the heat is on and these guys have to make some plays. So that'll be an interesting watch. I think that if it's Joe Flacco, it is definite. In my opinion, if I was setting this line, Joe Flacco being your starter, this game is closer to 6 points for the Rams. With how DTR can play and showing what he showed in that second half and how he was able to manage some of those bigger plays that
Mhm.
he ended up making, which honestly, it's a shame that he got knocked out of that game.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe that's not a conversation for this show, frankly, uh, but he actually can produce some big time plays, which we saw him do in college. Now, obviously, the NFL, an entirely different game. But as soon as he gets more comfortable, that is definitely going to be something that they could do moving forward and an interesting question for the Browns
Yeah.
as a team. So, but without further ado, V, that wraps up
Let's
that
do it.
game. We have the best game of the week, the game of the slate right here. The San Francisco 49ers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, 3-point home dogs. And of course, we had to do it up for the biggest game of the week and the biggest game of the month, probably. And we have a nice little head to head going on this one, V. Myself, I am on the side of Philly at home +3. I'm also liking the total a little bit, which we will get into a little bit later. For yourself, you are on the side of San Francisco -2.5. So it's like kind of a head to head, but it's because we're so good at shopping lines and we practice what we preach every
Yeah.
single week that you shop all the lines because the value is hidden in the margins. It is not just the upfront. We want every bit of value as we can get. So here I ride with the +3 and the push value. You get a very good value at -2.5, avoiding the 3-point push, getting underneath that. So that's a really good value there. For me, I was a little bit shocked by this line, frankly. I thought this game would be closer to a push. I agree that the 49ers are the better team right now. They've played fantastically. Now, I know that they dropped a bunch of stuff previously, and we had questions about them. They seem to have answered all those questions in spade. They're back to being that team that's hitting on all cylinders. But frankly, I question if this game was in San Francisco, why would it be a 6-point ish game in odds makers' eyes as the 49ers, the 49ers being 6-point favorites at home? I just don't see it being like that, which is one of the reasons I am leaning towards Philly. Just a couple of recent trends and just trends since the start of 2022. Philly obviously hasn't been dogs very often since the start of last season. They have just been dogs twice. They are 1-1 as dogs, and they were 0-1 as dogs until week 11 when they covered as a dog versus KC. San Francisco, though, has definitely been road favorites quite a bit since the start of 2022. They are 5-7 against the spread as road favorites. Now, that's not a horrible thing. It's hard to win as road favorites, especially given that they aren't just road favorites a lot. They're sizable road favorites a lot. So that makes a lot of sense with how they've gone. But for me, the big deciding factor is that Philly has been playing in big games recently, and they have been coming through with wins and covers against a murderer's row of opponents since the start of November. They hosted Dallas, went at KC, hosted Baltimore, all 3-0 against the spread. Maybe this could end up being an issue of the Eagles wearing down because they've had so many tough matchups. Frankly, that's something that is to be seen, but I think that the value here still has to lie with the home points at +3 for me. Another thing that I'm liking in this game, which a lot of people are liking, there's a huge amount of this handle on the game total and the over at over 47.5. And frankly, yes, these are good defenses. San Francisco's actually been a much more improved defense over Philly. I think a lot of people still think of Philly as this really elite defense that they were last year. They have not quite been. They've allowed some more yardage and points and things like that kind of drop them in total. It hasn't really affected them too much as they still have played well or they're winning games, and it doesn't really matter all that much. But it's definitely going to be something we watch for. Frankly, at the end of the day, this is the two of the top 4 offenses in points per game this season going at it. I expect points. 47.5 is frankly not a huge total when we talk about like 2 top 5 offenses in scoring playing against each other. Those usually equate to totals in the 50s, not 47.5. So that's why I lean on the side of the over there, and as well the side of Philly in the points. But V, I know the way you work, V. You're gonna go on here, you're gonna say some stuff, and then I'm gonna start questioning my life. So have at it, V. Why are you here riding with the 49ers at -2.5?
Yeah, well, let's start off with what you said at the beginning in terms of shopping these lines. It is absolutely critical that you guys find the correct line for these games because they are available, especially for this game. If you like San Francisco, there is absolutely no reason to take them at -3. You can definitely find them at -2.5. And a lot of places, you're doing yourself a great disservice by taking that extra half point unnecessarily because that is it's going to come into play in this game. It's hard to imagine that it won't because these teams are that close in terms of their talent and how they play. But for me, I just think we talked about it last week after the Thursday night games in terms of how good we think San Francisco is. I'm still standing on the ship that they are the best team in the NFL right now. They have been playing that well when healthy. They dominate on both sides of the ball. On offense, they're averaging 28.2 points per game, which is third in the NFL. On defense, they are allowing 15.5 points per game. That is first in the NFL. Philly played incredible last week on offense, but so many things had to go right for them to win that game. They had to make that insane field goal at the end of regulation. Olamide Zaccheaus' touchdown was just kind of a Hail Mary throw that I don't know if you could repeat if you were given 10 chances. I don't know how many times you would actually be able to make that play. There were a lot of penalties that went in their favor, especially that horse collar tackle on Josh Allen that was not called. Plus, they very clearly had the coaching advantage last week against Sean McDermott and whatever he was trying to do on defense. I don't think that's going to be the case this week when you go up against Kyle Shanahan, who has been just incredible given what he has done, despite having so many different quarterbacks that he has had to work through, consistently finding ways to put up points and just play great offense, and then finding the right guys to coach defense, despite those guys continuing to move on to head coaching positions. The Philadelphia defense has allowed 23 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. And in each of those 3 games, they allowed over 330 passing yards. The secondary is not good enough to be able to compete with the San Francisco offense. We have seen what Purdy can do with the weapons that he has, whether it's Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. All these guys are very good vertical threats, and Brock Purdy has shown that he's capable of finding them down the field. I think he's going to have a very big day against this porous Philadelphia secondary. And then I think just overall, San Francisco is the healthier team right now. Jalen Hurts still seems like he's bothered a little bit by that knee. He did not look great in that first half last week. Obviously, he came back in the second half and he just had a monster performance, but it seems like he's still not really at 100%. Fletcher Cox has not practiced yet this week for Philadelphia, so something to keep an eye out. But it does look like Lane Johnson will be back for them as he has been a full participant this week, so that will be big for them. But in general, I just think San Francisco is the healthier team. They are the better team, and if you're getting them less than 3, you just can't pass it up right now.
Yeah, I do have to agree with you that the Eagles injury situation, I know AJ Brown was also limited to participate in practice early on in the week. I believe Dallas Goedert might be out for this one
He's
too.
still he's still probably going to be out. I think
Yeah,
he's questionable at this point, but it's hard to imagine him playing with a broken forearm that soon after the injury.
right, exactly. So it's going to be a tough draw for them, obviously. And yeah, there's a lot that could go. At the end of the day, I think it really comes down to the value where we shopped it for sure.
Yep.
You hit the
Yep.
nail on the head. It was the first thing we said on both instances that shopping this game is so important. And if we go in here and look at some of these odds, courtesy of Betting Pros, who keeps track of all of the odds, so you can easily shop all the games and all the lines that you have available. Granted, it's not always live updated, so you'll have to kind of move around and find the values and, open up the accounts at these books yourself. But if we look into this game right here, the biggest sports book in the country has it at 2.5. A ton of other places have it at 3. You have no excuse to not buy the line you like.
Yep.
That's where this all comes down to, is buy the line you like. There's no right or wrong answer to games like this because both of these teams are obviously fantastic. This is going to be a playoff, matchup. This is going to be the NFC Championship matchup, most likely.
Yep.
So when you say that, it's all about finding the value within the margins. So please, 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 everybody, make sure you are shopping around. And V, I want to get your take on the over on this game. I'm leaning on the 47. What's your take with that in general?
Yeah, I was looking at that. I didn't feel super comfortable either way on the total in this game. I was really liking the under last week in that Buffalo Philly game, and it looked really good for a large chunk of that game. But then second half, both offenses just really exploded. So I think same thing could happen this week. Both offenses are certainly capable of putting up in the high 20s, low 30s. So it would not shock me. And given again how bad Philly's secondary has been recently, it would not surprise me if San Fran is able to do their part. San Fran is also without Talanoa Hufanga, who got injured a couple of weeks ago. So there's a big hole in that secondary. So it would not surprise me if Hurts also has a big game in the passing game. So over makes sense. I think for me, though, it's going to be a stay away. I'm going to try to find some better value on the board in terms of my totals this week.
I definitely get you. Well, that does it for us, V. That's the last game of our slate. It was a good slate and a good way to end it off. I really can't wait for it. There's some fantastic games in each window of the slate this week. Can't wait to see some of them, especially the last one that we just got over. Of course, that wraps us up. Week 13. We're back same time next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. Check us out, importantnonsense.com. That's how you can check out all of the team's work, betting, fantasy, guillotine, all that stuff. And that's how you can become a member, get into our Discord that way, ask us all the questions you want. If there was a game that you're interested in or a line that you're thinking about taking and you want our opinion on it, go in there, check it out. We're happy to give you our opinion on any of those and break down anything that you're seeing, or obviously get in there, talk to Jason, the Mike, Steve, Neil, all the guys about your fantasy teams. Fantasy playoffs are coming up. You don't want to miss out on that. So definitely get in there. And of course, last but certainly not least, if you guys at all want to support us, you can hit us up on the website, get yourself some IN merch, promo code LOCK. We very much appreciate it. It helps keeps the lights on here. And yeah, that about does it, V. Do you have any parting words for the folks at home?
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Should be a great week, and yeah, we're getting super close to the playoffs, so there's a lot of important football coming up. Hope everybody is excited and getting ready. It should be very enjoyable to watch.
Oh, I am stoked for it, and I can't wait to break it down with you, buddy. And until next week, good night, good luck.